want it more.
But also wants my car.
Sellers' cars want it more.
Well, shall I give them a call?
They'll do more, help more, and you could even get more. Cause sellers' cars want it more.
Well, that's more like it.
Everyone wants your car, but sellers' cars want it more. Visit sellerscars.co.za or call 0678 678 678.
The views and opinions expressed by the guest and presenters of Radio Al Ansar are not necessarily the views and opinions of Radio Al Ansar and the Al Ansar Foundation.
The Breakfast Rush, brought to you courtesy of the Willow Tin Group, at the forefront of innovation and one of the leading competitors in the South African FMCG market.
So the Energy Regulator, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa's highest decision-making body, has granted Eskom a 12.74% tariff increase for implementation on the 1st of April. The announcement coincided with the release of interim results by Eskom for the period to September 30, 2024. And these showed that the utility made a profit of 16 billion rand in the first 6 months, a period that coincides with the high demand and high tariff winter months. Now, we also experienced some load shedding this weekend, which was a slight indication that there are still some challenges at the entity. Now, joining us in, well, not in studio, but online, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and of course live from Australia is Professor Vally Padayachee, power and energy expert, former executive manager of Eskom and former senior executive City Power Johannesburg. Professor Padayachee, good morning or good afternoon to you in Australia. Welcome to the Breakfast Rush.
Good afternoon, Michelle, and Assalamu alaikum to you and your listeners. Yes, it's actually just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, yeah, and I'm sitting in the hotel lobby, listening and viewing your fabulous show, The Breakfast Rush.
Thank you very much, Prof. Prof, what, in your opinion, was the rationale behind the National Energy Regulator's announcement on Eskom's most recent MYPD6 tariff application?
Yeah, let me respond in the following way. Nersa, as you say, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, as a critical role or roles that it plays, which is mandated by law. So one of its most critical roles is to pronounce on tariff applications by Eskom and the municipalities, which they generally do every year, or Eskom sometimes does it once in 2 years or 3 years. So this particular year, for the financial year 25, the Eskom had made a tariff application for of about 36%. And as you say, Nersa awarded 1/3 of that, and that's 12.74. Now, the rationale, and you I think you use that word intentionally and not reasons. The rationale means what underpinned my best take on that. Nersa, as part of its mandated role, one of its major roles is to play a balancing act. So it has to balance the interests of the residents, the public, the utilities, meaning Eskom, and municipalities, and business, and the interests of the country. Now, I would hate to be in the position of the regulator now in this particular decision-making regime, because Eskom wanted a cost-reflective tariff, like the Munichs as well, so that they can sustain the business, like the private sector, which is relatively high-ish, maybe not 36%, but close to 36%. But Nersa has to provide an affordable tariff to benefit the public and the end users. So with that, it was difficult to award 36 or close to 36, in my opinion. because it will mess up the economy and the country. So hence, in my opinion, Nersa made that decision of 12%. Our suppliers, I expected something between 12 and 20%, but Nersa awarded 12.74. Michelle.
How do you anticipate that this Nersa's tariff announcement by Nersa will impact Eskom, municipalities, consumers, and businesses in South Africa? What should they prepare for?
Well, let me answer that quickly in the interest of time. Although if you look at, say, from the consumer side, they would say, oh, there's a relief. We didn't get 36%, but we got 12%, 12.74. But 12.74 is about 3 times or 4 times the inflation rate. The inflation rate is about 3.4%. So from that angle, there would be mixed reactions. If you look at Eskom, as I alluded to, Eskom wanted 36% to keep the business afloat. They got 12%, 1/3. So they're going to be on the back foot battling. Businesses also would be like the consumers, some sigh of relief, but also above inflation. If you look at government is reasonably happy because if they got 36%, it would create a right. And surviving 12%, at least there's some sense in that. So there's various reactions, but all in all, it was not the best decision to suit every stakeholder. Ms. Mira.
No, absolutely. You know, after nearly a year, approximately 310 consecutive days without load shedding, what, in your opinion, led to the sudden and bombshell decision by Eskom to implement load shedding again just this past Friday?
Well, I think by Eskom's admission on the reasons for that, and let me distill the reasons in very simple terms. Eskom fundamentally had a emergency capacity problem. In other words, let me say that very simply. It was not a capacity problem in general terms. It was an emergency capacity problem. And that emergency capacity in the main entailed 2 main infrastructure. It was the open cycle gas turbines, which burns a lot of diesel, and the pump storage scheme, which you get at the Drakensberg pump storage and in Ngula, right near Dundee, Ladysmith. And what had happened was, because a number of coal-fired units at the Tabo and Matimba power stations, their best performing power stations, 6 units, went on the blink, came offline, and that was about 3,600 megawatts. So to try and maintain the supply and demand, these emergency units kicked in, open cycle gas turbines and pump storage. And to put it very simply, they ran out of diesel because these things require diesel fired. So there was no diesel to continue firing those open cycle gas turbines, and they ran out of water. If you know the technicality and engineering of the pump storage, you need water and dams. They ran out of water in that week last week. So to replenish the stock, they didn't have emergency supply, so they had to load shed. And hence the load shed on Friday afternoon, Saturday, and they came back Sunday morning. So basically, hopefully it's not a continuation of this. It was just an emergency capacity issue. Nishal.
As a final question for this morning, how do you think the public will react or have reacted to the timing of both the Nersa tariff increase and the resumption of load shedding by Eskom announcements?
I was hoping that you didn't ask me that question, but I was in the back of my mind knew it was going to come. Well, you know, the timing, it was 1 day apart, less than 24 hours. On Thursday afternoon, on Thursday lunchtime, Nersa announced a decision. And then on Friday morning, and we expected it, some of us expected that announcement. So within 24 hours, you had 2 major announcements. Major announcement by Nersa, and you had a bombshell announcement by Eskom on Friday. And lots of people, and maybe I don't blame them, that they were basing this on conspiracy theories. They just said, oh, because Eskom didn't get the 36%, they're now showing who the big brother is. And So they went on load shedding. But there's no evidence for that. Now, I'm giving an independent view. And as an engineer and who comes in the sector, there's no evidence for that. It was rather unfortunate that it happened within 48 hours. But because in my opinion, Eskom could have load shed last week or early this week. Early last week, because as I said, they ran short of supply because supply and demand has to match to keep the grid stable. They ran short of supply because we had the 6 units off. So what they did, they pushed the open cycle gas turbines and the pump storage to the yield, right? But if they didn't have the open cycle gas turbines and pump storage, they would have load shed. So they would have load shed before Nersa's announcement. So that's why I make the opinion as an experienced executive from this sector that is conspiracy theory. But as a quick response, I didn't blame the public. Michelle.
So I know that Nazmira said it was the last question, and it was the last question on that topic of tariff increase. Something's come up in news just over the last 24 to 48 hours, which I think whilst you're on the line might be interesting to just get your cold opinion on this one here. I know that we've not prepped for it, and if you don't want to answer the question, you're most welcome to say, Nishal, let's talk about it later. So Eskom has issued a stern warning to homeowners with rooftop solar systems, stating that all installations must be registered with the utility or risk being deemed illegal. It's a process that could be quite costly. So this regulation applies even to those systems that do not feed electricity back into the grid. The move is part of Eskom's broader effort to ensure compliance with national electricity regulations and maintain grid stability. Your opinion on this, considering that many people, because of the severity of load shedding, have gone the route of installing solar panels and trying to get their homes off grid. Your thoughts on this warning from Eskom to your general homeowners?
No, in fact, I'm not afraid to make a comment on this because I can come from two aspects. You mentioned the Regulation Act. I will come from the OSHA Act and the other thing. And I also come from the NRS. I have to chair the NRS Association. Very fundamentally, Eskom and the municipalities own the national grid. That's their property, right? If you want to use the grid, you apply to them. Now, in terms of the OSHA Act, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, if you connect to the grid, if somebody dies or gets injured, it's the responsibility of the owner, which is Eskom and the municipalities. I was very much involved with the Department of Labor a few years ago in crafting out a directive to ensure that happens. So yes, if you do not register your connection to the grid, I mean, how can you come into, very simply, it's saying like, you come into my property without telling me and do your own thing. You can't do that. If you want to connect to the grid, you do it legally. And if you don't do it legally, then Eskom is quite correct in doing that, taking that steps. And the municipalities will do the same because they own the grid. But it's importantly from a safety aspect inter alia.
Yes.
So I'm not afraid to make that comment.
So whilst you were saying that, listeners are saying, but what about the illegal connections that are just coming off a light pole and heading off into somebody's dwelling? But I'm not going to ask you to answer that one.
No, I'll give you a quick statement. The fact that you said it's illegal, it means it's illegal by law. So you cannot even connect illegally. That's why we have load reduction. Eskom and the municipalities are taking off the grid. They have to reduce load. So illegal is illegal by the law. Follow the rules.
I love it. We'll leave it right there. Follow the rules. Follow the law. Folks, that was our energy expert, Professor Vally Padayachee, the power and energy expert, and of course, former executive manager of Eskom and former senior executive City Power Johannesburg, Professor Vally Padayachee, live in Australia at the moment. Thank you very much for your time on the Breakfast Rush once again. Wish you a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you very much. Much obliged.
There we go. Always such a pleasure speaking with him, and always so knowledgeable, and happy to freely give of his knowledge as well. It's 25 minutes after 7. It's your breakfast rush. When we come back, we're telling you on a Monday what to expect at our set of Vodacom stores.
The Breakfast Rush, brought to you